are the strict and particular Baptists? In our previous study, I introduced you to a circle of historic churches in England called the Strict and Particular Baptists. From their origin in the early 17th century, this group of churches subscribed to high views of sovereign grace. They were high Calvinists. Now, you'll sometimes hear people tell you that high or hyper-Calvinism represents only a small number of churches during the last several centuries. However, by the turn of the 20th century, there were almost 600 strict and high Calvinist Baptist churches scattered around England. Do you know this made up 1/3 of all Baptist churches in the country? As you can see from the map, there were 69 chapels in Greater London, with another 160 chapels in the surrounding counties. And if you pause this video, you'll be able to examine the number of strict and high Calvinist Baptist chapels in other counties around the country. Of course, the Arminians and moderate Calvinists would have you believe high Calvinist churches have only been few in number. But that's simply not true. My dear friends, as the map demonstrates, we belong to a long line of faithful believers who shared the same faith and understanding of the gospel as ourselves. Having said this, these strict and high Calvinist Baptist men and women are not well known among Christians today. Nowadays, when many Christians think of the outstanding Baptists of earlier centuries, they tend to be more familiar with names such as Andrew Fuller, William Carey, and C.H. Spurgeon. These men, however, did not belong to the high Calvinist circle of churches. They were among the leading figures of the moderate Calvinists of their day. For this study, I would like to introduce you to some of the men and women who belonged to the strict and high Calvinist Baptist churches. Names with which we should all be familiar, as they have bequeathed to us a wealth of information in the form of biographies, sermons, and poetry. We begin with one of the earliest strict and particular Baptist preachers, named John Skep. Skep was converted to Christ under the ministry of a congregational minister named Joseph Hussey. And though this man was not a strict Baptist, yet I include him on the timeline. Skep became the pastor of the Baptist congregation that was meeting at Cripplegate, London. This congregation had been organized by another strict Baptist pastor named Hansard Knollys. It was under the ministry of Skep that a woman named Anne Dutton, a prolific high Calvinist writer, sharpened her understanding of sovereign grace. Skep was also influential in the life and ministry of John Gill. Not only did he take part in Gill's ordination, but his books on the Hebrew language were acquired by Gill after his death. It was under the gospel ministry of Gill that a man named John Brine was converted to Christ. At the age of 27, Brine followed Skep in the pastorate of the church at Cripplegate, where he served for 35 years. Brine also took part in the ordination of a man named John Ryland Sr., another Baptist pastor who became a leading advocate of high Calvinism. Richard Burnham served as the pastor of the Strict Baptist Church meeting at Grafton Street, Soho. He was a prolific hymn writer. He not only published his own collection of hymns, but many of his compositions have been included in other hymn books, such as that of Gatsby's collection of hymns. After this man's death, Grafton Street invited John Stevens to take the pastorate. Stevens, of course, is best known for his writings against Andrew Fuller. Samuel Collins, he was converted to Christ under the ministry of John Stevens. In 1826, Collins agreed to become the pastor of the church meeting at Gundonsbury, Suffolk. This man enjoyed a very fruitful ministry. He baptized around 400 people. He trained 8 men for the gospel ministry. And he supplied 10 village preaching stations through the efforts of his church. And in 1832, he sought to promote the values of the strict and particular Baptists by producing a new magazine called The Gospel Herald. For the first several years, he shouldered the entire responsibility of publishing and editing that magazine. And I have to confess on a personal note, I sometimes feel his burden, as I've sought to do something similar through the Association of Historic Baptists. Well, I then bring you to a man named William Gatsby. Gatsby was converted to Christ at the age of 17. In addition to becoming the pastor of the Strict Baptist Church meeting at Black Lane Chapel in Manchester, he served as an open-air evangelist. He traveled over 60,000 miles. He preached over 12,000 sermons. He helped organize more than 40 churches. And he took a keen interest in Sunday schools. In 1835, he also launched the Gospel Standard magazine. John Warburton was converted to Christ at the age of 20 under the ministry of a congregational pastor. 8 years later, he was baptized by William Gatsby in the chapel at Black Lane in Manchester. He became the pastor of Zion Strict Baptist Church in Trowbridge, where he served for 42 years. John Kershaw was a close associate of William Gatsby. He became the pastor of the Strict Baptist Church meeting at Hope Chapel, Rochdale, where he served for 53 years. George Wright was converted to Christ under the ministry of the Wesleyan Methodists. However, he was soon convinced of the doctrine of election and then persuaded that only believers were permitted to be baptized. After he was immersed in 1822, he became the pastor of the Strict Baptist Church in Beccles. Philip Dickerson was the pastor of the Strict Baptist Church meeting on Little Alley Street, Whitechapel, London, where he served for 37 years. Incidentally, in 1866, he was one of 5 pastors to oversee the organizing of a new church meeting in Kensington, which would later be named Bethesda Baptist Church, the congregation that I pastored for 20 years. Joseph Philpott was converted to Christ under the personal influence of John Nelson Darby. Darby was a central leader among the Plymouth Brethren, actually the founder, the father of modern dispensationalism. Well, after Philpot was converted to Christ, he became the residing curate of 2 parishes in Oxfordshire. During his 7-year ministry, he met a man named William Tiptaft, and together they grew to nurture high views of sovereign grace. Upon leaving the Church of England, both men, Philpot and Tiptaft, were baptized and became pastors of strict Baptist churches. And then there is a man named Charles Banks. He was converted to Christ and baptized at Canterbury, where he began preaching. After moving to London in 1840, he became the pastor of several churches. In 1845, he started a new magazine called The Earthen Vessel and became the sole editor until his death 41 years later. John Foreman was for almost 40 years the pastor of the strict Baptist church at Hill Street Chapel in Marylebone. Now, he's best known for a book published against duty faith, which in my opinion excels all other works of its kind, not only encapsulating the essence of high Calvinism, but unearthing the pernicious roots of Fullerism. And then there is James Wells, the pastor of the strict Baptist church meeting in Surrey Tabernacle, Suffolk. His congregation was not far from Spurgeon's tabernacle, and as a contemporary with Spurgeon, he frequently blasted the Prince of Preachers for his duty faith and free offer perversions. John Hazelton became the pastor of the strict Baptist church meeting at Chadwell Street in London, and he remained there for 35 years. In 1866, he was another of the 5 pastors who helped organize Bethesda Baptist into a church, again, the congregation that I pastored for 20 years. My good friend Peter Minnie gifted me a copy of John Gill's Body of Doctrinal and Practical Divinity, and when I opened the cover, it had the name, the signature of John Hazelton, a very special gift from my friend Peter, the personal copy of John Gill's Divinity belonging to John Hazelton. The last name I'm going to highlight on this timeline is John Booth. He was converted to Christ at the age of 20. He became the pastor of Zorra Particular Baptist Chapel in Bradford, where he served for 30 years. This happens to be the church where another good friend of mine, named Kevin Price, has been ministering the gospel for many years. Now, my dear brethren, I hope this little introduction to some of the more prominent men and women belonging to the strict and high Calvinist Baptists of past centuries has demonstrated the proud legacy and rich heritage they have left for us today. Their names are honorable, insomuch that they were adorned by the gospel of Christ. And their writings are edifying, as they invariably exalt the Savior and magnify the God of all grace. So then, you may ask, where can I find their writings? Well, many of their writings are now out of print, but there are ways to track down copies. For instance, with a simple Google search, you can actually obtain free digital copies of many out-of-print books. You may also want to visit some second-hand Christian bookstores, such as the Christian Bookshop managed by Jeremy and Lorna Rowe in Ossett, England. And just in case you can't travel that distance to the bookshop, you can always visit their website and make an online order. And of course, you may read a wide range of strict Baptist writings through the online resources of the Association of Historic Baptists, otherwise called the AHB. The AHB is designed to promote the teachings of the strict and particular Baptists by making many of their writings available online for Christians today. And I certainly hope you'll make an effort to familiarize yourself with these high Calvinist writings, for I believe they will prove a means through which the Lord will build you up in your most holy faith. With that said, I pray you'll know the blessings of the Lord for the week ahead, and I look forward joining again with you for our next study. Until then, may the Lord bless you.